What's happening, Coach?
Happy Monday. It's July 1st. It is 2019. Welcome aboard. Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 281. We'll try to be pumped up today, but I think we're both a little somber today.
A little bit, yeah.
I think we're both a little somber. First off, welcome. We appreciate you joining us. This is, as we said, the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 281. We come to you every Monday and Thursday, covering a really a broad range of topics, starting with triathlon and more so just kind of incorporating how triathlon fits into our life and the kind of the analogies that we can take to hopefully benefit, positive, outcomes and growth in both life and in triathlon, all the things that kind of intermingle and kind of mesh together. And we cover, training, racing, the things you need to know, incorporate with all three sports. We both coach. We have for a long time. We have a lot of successful athletes. If you haven't listened, subscribe, dive deep into the archives. We go back quite a while and cover like we said, a variety of topics. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can also head over to Facebook, search Crushing Iron Group, and be part of the conversation there. It's always lively, helpful, and there's a lot of really, really wise and experienced athletes in there willing to help you along your journey and be kind of give constructive not criticism, but just constructive feedback on questions you might have and things that might benefit you in the future. And but yeah, we're usually pretty lively, and I mean sometimes we're pretty funny, but we're usually pretty lively and positive. But I think I was already kind of somber going into today anyway, and then you and I just kind of shared a brief exchange via text about one of our club members and one of our podcast listeners had needed some medical attention yesterday. I think that's probably as far as we're both comfortable going, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. It's just
and it's sombering. And it was yesterday. I was just sad yesterday and frustrated. I guess not frustrated to be sad, but sad as in we had some athletes. We had a ton of athletes racing yesterday all over. And again, congrats to everyone who got out and laid themselves out there to perform, and congrats to everyone. But we had three athletes at a smaller sprint race in Virginia, and I got a text early in the morning that divers were in the water looking for an athlete that was in the very first wave of the race, and it ended up passing away, I think, from drowning. And it kind of left me in not a funk, but just kind of I was kind of at a loss, my brain works in a way. I'm a problem solver. I like to think of, and my wife hates this sometimes because she'll try to talk to me about work or something. My first thing is oh, well, you of course want feedback. So let me tell you how this could be better.
Right.
And then she's like, you should just shut your mouth. I just want you to listen. So I'm trying to get better at that. But so my brain is always working in a capacity of how can this be fixed? How can this be better? How can I contribute? How can we contribute? And as a coach and as an athlete, as a father, as a husband, and a friend with so many athletes, it really hit me for the first time, hit hard, with athletes racing all over. I'm sure some of these athletes that things have happened in just everyday life. I mean, we had a mutual acquaintance or friend or somebody we knew who passed away a few weeks ago in the tri community that was non-triathlon related, but it was just what can we do? What can we do better? How can not do better so much, but what can we do as a coach, as an athlete, as a friend, as someone who is in the sport of triathlon? What can we do to help? Mm-hmm. And I think oftentimes there is no real concrete, black and white answer, and I don't think there is one for pretty much anything in life. But I think we should always kind of step back and ask ourselves, what are we doing? And how can we help? And I just think that like so many things in our life, like day to day with everything, like not even triathlon really. It's like how can we help? How can we be of service? And I think that always comes back to benefit us in a way that we never would have gotten if we had been so self-centered about it, but and I know that we all can't make a direct impact, but I think we often underestimate our ability to make a positive or influential impact on people that we may know or that we may not know. And I have no idea where this was going to go, but it's I don't know. I just found myself in this place today of just like, what else is there that we can do? And help people. And obviously the other thing that we were kind of texting back for was nothing to do with, triathlon related. And I'm not even just talking about the swim, and I'm kind of over talking about it. It's just like, what can we do as coaches and as a people within the triathlon community to be ambassadors for our sport and grow the sport and be positive in it, and because it changes so many people's lives. But at the same time, what can we do or say or help prepare the people that are coming into the sport who have been in it, to hopefully help them succeed and live these happy and healthy lives that we really want them to have. And obviously we're not God, and we don't make the ultimate decisions, and life can happen on a dime and we're not in control. But I think it's a constructive conversation that we can all have and take in some extended ownership and accountability towards doing the best that we can to make the sport great and to help and provide a positive atmosphere and environment for those athletes that participate in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did hit on it. I think the troubling part sometimes is that not understanding, and the reality is this. It's all bigger than us. You know what I mean? It's just there's just not a lot sometimes you can do other than, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because it's so easy to get, when you're coming from, usually sports are sort of an aggressive thing and tough thing and whatever, and it's real easy to kind of get, I don't know, cocky or snarky or like aggressive with everything. And I honestly just been thinking is like, I feel like what, I'm not necessarily talking about triathlon, but what the world needs is kind of a kindness overload. It's like, that's really what it's all about. I mean, I don't know, getting into triathlon, I mean, it's like, what do we prove to ourselves? I mean, it's always got to kind of have this, like, conquer the mountain kind of thing. And I think that's great. And we talk about it all the time that you have to do tough stuff in life. But then you hear stuff like the swims. And I think there was another one posted this morning, too. Wasn't there another one from another Ironman?
Yeah, Finland.
Yeah.
I think it was Finland.
And I know we talk a lot about, like, just trying to be as prepared as you can and knowing what you're up against. But, like sometimes you just, as we talked about, sometimes it's seasoned athletes, stuff just happens, and I think that is the somber vein that's running through me too. The same thing you were talking about is that it's like you sometimes you just can't figure it out. You don't have the solution per se, but you can kind of just hope to spread support and realize that we're all humans in this together, and the best thing is to like be open and be communicative and be willing to help however you can and think about what other people need. And it's kind of I think that's the thing that's great about, and I was just working on that camp video from June last, all day yesterday pretty much, and you notice that there's such good people, and we talk about this a lot as sort of this individual sport as we're all trying to get better, and we ended up doing so many things kind of isolated. But the reality is that there's a lot of really good people out there, and they're willing to help and support you, and I think we need more of that.
It's such a great point, and I think, I think we need this as triathletes too, like, and people, in that, I think we all get caught up in challenging each other in all the totally like wrong ways. And I think it's reciprocal in both triathlon and in life, in that, this day and age, we've come to, it's become like the social norm to challenge people in ways of, money and status and what you own and what you drive and how you dress and the coffee that you get and the wine that you drink and the clothes that you wear. And, how can we, how can we challenge each other to live up to the standards that society sets, when the bikini bods on Instagram and the guys making, millions of dollars at 26, and, the perfect parents that child like never, has a bad day, and the, and moms that, like never, get impatient with their children, and dads that are always home. Like, we challenge each other, or find ourselves challenging each other in that area to live up to those. And then we criticize each other internally or on Facebook or behind closed doors for not doing that. And most of it's a facade. Most of it's not even real. But the majority of it doesn't mean jack shit. It's if we could like put our energy towards like challenging each other to be better people, to be kinder to one another, to hold each other accountable in ways that would make us and our friendships and our relationships and our communities and our neighborhoods, whatever. If we would use that kind of energy and or scorn or whatever you want to put it towards pushing people into like meaningful changes that really can like enrich and have an impact on their life, like that's the kind of thing you need to challenge people with, and to think for themselves, and to not care what somebody else thinks. Like, if you think it and you feel like it's best for you, then do it. Drive that train, get after it. And I'll be the first one to tell you, if some of the athletes haven't already told you, is sometimes I can be a real prick. But the things that I say and the things that I do are because I love my athletes so fiercely that I want the best for them. Whether they think it or they don't think it all the time, everything that I say and everything that I do is because I want the best for them. And that it meshes, because it always does. It meshes in life and triathlon at the same time, because they're all in the same bucket. We're all living life and we're all playing triathlon. Whether you want to admit it or not, triathlon is not your life. You can pretend like it is or act like it is, but it's not. It's something that we do. It's a hobby. And while I challenge them and I hold them accountable and I push them in ways and I make them think for themselves, and sometimes I say things they probably don't want to hear, it's because I love them so fiercely that I want them to be so successful in everything that they do. Whether it's getting out of a relationship, whether it's quitting a job, whether it's asking for a promotion, whether it's not going out for a run, whether it's deciding for yourself to go do something else. Like, it's about becoming a better person and a better athlete all at the same time. Because if you're just becoming a better athlete, you're not becoming a better person, then what are you even doing? Because we can't, like, I really hope that no one's gonna go to their tombstone. It's not gonna say, "Here lies Joe Triathlete, Ironman PR, 13:23:57, 70.3 PR, 8-time finisher." Like, I hope it doesn't say that. I hope it has like some like lasting memory and the impact that you made. And so I think that we have to do a better job of holding people accountable and like pushing them to do things they're not comfortable with, or at the same time being like, hey, like, you need to take this more seriously. If you want this to be this and this, then you need to take this more seriously. Because I do think there's also a accountability and I don't want to say a seriousness. That's not even a word, really. I think in triathlon, that it has become such a trend sport, like the new golf, that everybody just thinks that they can just pick it up and do it, and they can, but like it's a different animal. And I just think that we need to challenge ourselves differently to prepare and to do things, and you have to have the ultimate goal of ultimate success, that is safety and also being healthy and happy all at the same time, and forcing these things and doing the best that you can. And I think that's the part of that makes us hard, is that it's really uncomfortable. because then you're afraid that person's not going to like you, or that they're going to be mad at you, or they're not going to talk to you anymore, or they'll talk bad about you. But if you really want the best for somebody, then you need to be able to tell them the things that they don't want to hear, even though they need to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those are the conversations that we rarely ever have anymore with our friends. And then I think as triathletes, I think if you want to spin it, those are the conversations that we have to have, that are just kind of that brutal, black and white, like, this is just how it is. And I say this because I love you, not because I'm trying to belittle you. And I think that's often a very delicate delivery, and I'm not always great at it. My wife was the first one to tell you I am not always great at it, but my intentions are always there. And I just think it's something that we could all strive to do better at, and that's myself included.
Yeah. Well, it's for sure myself included. And when we think of this whole idea of happy and healthy, with so many people wanting to do triathlon and just jumping in the sport, and that's why it's like, from day one, I've been the first to back down, or like, take care of myself in whatever way necessary, and skip workouts and things like that. I just think with the fast track world that we're on, and the quick fix and the hacks and the whole 9 yards, it's like, this is not the right sport to be messing with in that regard. You know what I mean? Like, if I want to decide that I want to do something in life, whatever it may be, like, if you're talking about doing certain things like Ironman or 70.3s or Olympics or whatever they are, that's like, it takes time to, there's certain people that are kind of cut from the cloth that can kind of probably get right in and sort of pick it up because they've had the background. But a lot of times people haven't had the background, and there's this sort of force that always pushes you to want to be faster and faster and faster. And what you're messing with is your physiology and your history, and so many people I talk to are like, I'm out, I'm hurt, I'm like, all these things are always happening, and it's so hard to pull the reins back. And I find myself doing that a lot with coaching, and I'm sure you do. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about in a lot of ways. It's like, hey man, you got to be responsible to your life, and you can't just always go in, 1,000% on continual workouts. I mean, it's just like a weird thing, man. Like, I want to be consistent, but like, sometimes you just know that you have to take it easy. You have to, there's only so much energy that we have, and to abuse that by pouring 90% of your bucket into triathlon is irresponsible, I think. And I find myself doing that a lot. So I have to really step back and, look at this sport for what it is. It's a tough sport. It's something that, challenges your body all the time and your mind, and then you don't have the energy and whatever. So, I'm just like rambling here because I know we're trying to find a spot with this thing, like.
Well, I don't know. I think it's okay to not have one. Like, I mean, listen, like, we don't have the answers. Nobody does.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's like, I always, like,
it's okay to be at a loss. It's okay to be at a loss of what to say or what to do, but like, it's still fine, and I think good and positive, and that's why you still have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a perfect answer for it, but
I just want to say though, because it's like, somebody when they pointed, it was that Ironman swim drowning or death. Where did we say, Finland?
Yeah, I think so.
And there was a comment in there. There was a couple comments in there that kind of caught my attention. One was like, hey, we all are going to die. And at some point, like, people make choices like, hey, I want to try this. I want to do this. And I think that's so valid. I mean, you always hear about I knew people from my childhood that, were like crazy motorcycle riders or whatever, and they just always went fast. And it was kind of that live fast, die young thing. And I don't know, I can't judge, that sort of mentality, like, I know when I'm getting into these races what that means. There's always risks in everything, and sometimes you just want to push yourself, and I think that's fair. And then someone else pointed out that, Ironman and I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like I don't know, over the last several years, there's been a lot of events, and it's gotten so corporate, and we talk about how it's a money game for them, and it is, but like you said, it's sort of like corporate Instagram-y kind of behavior, where it's like they're always chasing more and more and more, and then you have to ask is like, hey, are you spreading this out too wide and creating desires for people that maybe shouldn't be doing these events or whatever, It's like that corporate rush for money too is kind of a frustrating piece of this puzzle, because you wonder if, like, I'm not saying they're neglecting or not doing the right things. I don't know the answer to that, but you have to wonder if, like, sometimes it gets to the point where it's on autopilot and things aren't like as conscious as they once were,
I think, yeah, I do. I think they're going to find themselves in a tough spot. They are a business. They're a business and a brand first. They aren't a sport, and I think sometimes we forget that. Mm-hmm. And I think they're finding themselves in the unenviable position of, like, take it as like the leading automaker in the country. They make all the cars everyone wants to buy, their car brand. The Ironman Car brand. Everybody wants to buy the Ironman Car. Everybody loves them. It's the most popular one. Everybody wants to do them. And they are allowed to sell them to 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. Now, they don't have a license yet, and they can't get in trouble for it, but they can still sell them to it. And then those drivers, those 13, 14-year-old drivers who might not be ready to drive a car can still purchase one. So they find themselves in that difficult situation for them, maybe, of, do we still sell to them because we have profit to make? As long as they sign the waiver that if they take this car out without having a license and they're not prepared to drive it and they crash and they get hurt, then they can't sue us. So we're good. But then a bunch of 12, 13, 14-year-old kids who aren't prepared to drive, who haven't, taken tests and prepared and practiced and put themselves in situations where they can, maneuver. Of course, no matter what, people are still going to die driving cars. Happens every day. That's just a reality. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. That's just a reality. Car accidents happen every single day. But then even though they're not technically, they've basically written themselves liability-wise out of being at fault, the narrative is still, all these people are passing away driving this Ironman car. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of where I think we've ended up with the sport, is that it's now, the doors are wide open for everyone all the time, and it should be. But now I think they're finding that the narrative is going to be hard for them to spin, as in, we're not liable, which is fine, but like, I can't remember, I heard this post a couple weeks ago, said you never want to be the who society is in love with or who society hates. You never want to be either one of those. You always want to be in the middle. As in, you just want to basically go undetected. Because if you're a person where the society always hates you, then bad things are going to happen. And you're going to get, basically ridiculed, deserving or not, for something, and bad things are going to happen. Or if you're glorified by the media, then people are going to hate you just for being glorified by the media. And then obviously the media always turns, so you're going to end up being the feeling the vitriol of that. So I think that it's a difficult position to be in. And I think, again, like, I feel like I have to remind everyone is that Ironman is a business. Like, they just went public, I believe, or they were going, like, somewhere I read where I think they went, like, they showed like a $220 million profit. Yeah, I may have misread that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read. And it ain't broke, and so but I think some things are cracking. But I think, I don't know, man. I think as of right now, the way it sits, until they decide to do something else, because you can't control other people. And I think that's also oftentimes the thing that we as athletes don't take enough responsibility, because we assume, let's take the safest route, for example. You know what, man? I don't need to learn how to change my tire. because there's going to be bike mechanics out there. So take that as a perfectly plausible reason that you're a plausible circumstance that's going to happen during a race, but you're just choosing to blatantly not learn because you assume somebody else is going to do it for me. Somebody else will be there. I'll be taken care of. And then you end up getting a flat, and then you end up, being the person who moans and groans on Facebook that there wasn't a bike mechanic to be around for hours, and I don't know where they went. And so, but whose fault? It's yours for not learning how when you could have. And so when you take that into a much more sensitive topic when it comes to swimming and maybe other areas, and bike handling is one. Pacing yourself on the run that doesn't get you in trouble with the heat, like all these things that you should just know how to do. Or not. I'm not saying that even if you know them, it's going to be perfect and always safe. I'm just saying that people, I think, assume that wetsuits are going to save them, and that people don't respect the water the way that they should. And I understand that a lot of these are cardiac events, and there's really probably nothing you could do to prepare besides going the extra step. And I mean, my wife said it to me yesterday in the car. She was like, and I'm about as comfortable as you're ever going to find with anybody in the open water. I'm more comfortable in the water than I am on land. And she looked at me and she said, I think it's time for you to go get checked. And because I'm getting close to 40, I mean, we won't talk about it, but I am. And so I will. Because I care more about being around for my son than I care about going out for a 2.4-mile swim.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that we just assume that everything is going to work out in our favor, not as in that's a bad way to look at things, because I think it's actually a positive, but I think you toe that line of being irresponsible and not holding yourself accountable for doing the things that are necessary, because life as we know it now, you can basically have everything catered to you. You don't have to, it's just how it is. And I think that you just we as an athlete have to take ownership of setting ourselves up for success in a safe way that has us ultimately prepared with going to the doctor and getting checked out, swimming in a wetsuit very often, or just not wearing a wetsuit, because I think sometimes wetsuit might actually be more of a problem than not. And doing everything we can and getting in open water, practicing all these things that make us uncomfortable to figure out like what I might need to do. If we have this at every triathlon camp, every swim camp we have, because I think this is another thing that people kind of misunderstand. When you get in distress in the water, don't yell for help, because no one's going to hear you. You have to wave your hands, wave your arms. I think these things have changed, but there just has to be, we have to do better ourselves, because right now we're the only ones that can take ownership and accountability, because as the consumer, it's on us. And the business or the brand that we're currently purchasing from, an Ironman, while you want to blame them, tell them that they need to have higher standards and they need to have a testing, people are still going to do the minimum, because that's how people work. They want to do the minimum, and they just think they can skate by because it's just this. And I just think it's time that we all take things a little more seriously, and that's on coaches too. You need to be harder on your athletes when it comes to swimming. You need to make sure that they're prepared. You need to equip them as best as you possibly can, because the days where coaches would always say, "Oh, the swim doesn't matter. You don't need to spend that much time doing it. You're just setting yourselves up for total 100% failure." But as a coach now, I have to believe that some of these athletes that have passed away, unfortunately, and it's sad, some of them have had coaches, and it's not the coach's fault. Things happen, but I can't imagine the devastation that I would feel as a coach if I ever lost an athlete like that. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah,
and
you don't know.
It's and you're not controlling. And again, I'm not saying that coaches can prevent it, because you can't, but you can, I think, minimize the risk and set your athletes up for success as best that you can. And I think that's something that we need to take more responsibility of.
Yeah, for sure. I do agree with that. I think also, as someone who has had a lot of anxiety in my day through the water, and that's why I'm so strong-headed on this idea of being warmed up, because it's sort of like we've all had, really good swims, and we've all had crappy swims, and that's just sort of how it goes. And it's, to me, it's like figuring out why you feel really good and relaxed sometimes in the water. And for me, it's sort of when, you get down to that beginning of that race and there's all that energy and the music's pumping and everybody's around, and you're not used to having, like, you're used to swimming by yourself, and all of a sudden you're swimming with 2,500 people around you and everybody's in a wetsuit and there's just all this la da da. And if you're kind of like tensed up, and I mean, there's like bad, I'm sure a lot of people have had anxiety, and it's not cool, man. It's not a good feeling to have that. And it's so important to be warmed up and relaxed. And I know I talk about that ad nauseum, but it's just, for me, that's why when I brought up Wisconsin and the mass start, for me, it was just like such a great idea to get out there 15 minutes early in the water, and that's just like an unbelievable load it takes off your body. I don't know what it is, but it's sort of that, like, and then when they eliminated the mass start the second year, I was up there and I was kind of watching how they did it, and they went in waves of 500 people, and it was such a rush job, man. It just was freaking me out because it was like, everybody get out there, go, and then the next group was like behind them, and they had like 3 minutes to get out to a spot and then like get ready to go. And it was just similar to a mass start because there's still 500 people around, but nobody was kind of relaxed or warmed up, I'm assuming. But anyway, I'd like to also go back to your point about like Ironman as a brand and a business, and it's one of those hairy spots for me because they're obviously doing amazing things for the sport of triathlon. And it's one of those deals where, I'm from Wisconsin, and when they were building Miller Park, which is a domed stadium to replace the old county stadium up there, the new baseball field for the Brewers, they had a situation where they're building, and they had a bunch of cranes up there, and there's people working one day, and like a storm blew through, and like a bunch of people died, like workers. And I'm sure this kind of same thing happened like with the Hoover Dam. You hear all these stories about, like, these great projects or whatever that push through, and you don't hear about, like, or you do hear about them, but it's sort of like they're forgotten, you know what I mean? So in this push to be a major player in history or like a major impact on society or whatever, it's sometimes like, things happen along the way, and they just got to push through it. So I always have a difficult time with this, like, wow, is it worth it? Because I have a good friend who's into history, and he talks about all these things that, like, people don't even have a clue about how things really happened, and the devastation behind certain, things that are looked at in this country as great things or whatever, and how many people lost their lives or whatever the case may be. And that's one of those things, right? It's like, I'm sure a few people died building the pyramids, you know what I mean? But we just relish in how great, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that's the kind of thing that Ironman is facing, is sort of like, well, we've got our mission is big, and we want to bring triathlon to the world or whatever the case is. And, there's nothing's ever going to go perfect. And how do you kind of turn another eye to that?
Man, and the thing too is that I think more, like, the general consensus might be like, this is terrible for the sport. I don't think that it's going to deter anyone, to be honest with you. I think that people in life need something, and they need an outlet, and they need something to do. And and I'm not like saying, like,
right, it's kind of that life goes on,
right. It's I mean, people pass away every day driving cars. Yeah, here we are driving cars, and I think you can't live like that either. But I think that people's urge to hope, like, to find something or figure things out is always going to be greater than their sense of self-preservation, which again also leads to, like, the vitriol I'm often the leader that will spit at them for like they shortened Ironman Nice, based on city officials, because it was too hot.
Mm-hmm.
And the week before it was too cold, which it was. And I think sometimes while we want to, and I'm 100% totally guilty of this. And while sometimes I think it's a little too soft, and I'll stick to that. Sometimes I think I am a little too hard on them in reading some things and thinking a little bit further in that the more and more athletes and more people you get into these sports, and I commented on this in our closed Facebook group on that thread, is that you can't trust people to make the best decisions. And you can't always trust the individual to decide, I need to slow down because I'm getting too hot. Because they just won't, or they refuse to, or they lack the deductive reasoning or the objectivity that to say, you know what, I need to slow down today. I mean, take Sarah True. I mean, of course, it's a little bit different. She was winning Ironman Frankfurt yesterday by 7 minutes, and she collapsed with like less than a mile to go and got pulled out of the race because she passed out and collapsed from heat. So, and while I think that's a little bit different because she's a professional, she obviously didn't know when to slow down. Even at a 7-minute lead, she could have walked to the finish and won. But she's wired in a way of thinking, I have to push myself and keep pushing until I can't anymore. There she goes. Ends up getting pulled out of the race, DNF, when she was at 7 minutes away from winning. Could have probably walked it home. But you can't take into account, well, everybody except for these 5 people are going to make the best decisions, and they're gonna, but same for things with the swim. Everybody's probably prepared for this except for probably like 30 people. But guess what? Those 30 people are going to cause absolute utter chaos, destruction, and maybe even some kind of medical emergency. And so I have to imagine that what they're thinking is we can't. Because people make mistakes. People are fallible. People make poor decisions. People don't know when to say no. People will prepare absolutely horribly for things they should have prepared better for. And as the business and as that brand, they have to also decide, well, you know what? We need to minimize and mitigate the risk in this. And we're just going to cancel it altogether. Because you have to think that they're making that decision based on the 5% that may not be prepared for it versus the 95% that is. And it's instead of the 95% maybe wanting to take more accountability and helping and talking to people in their local tri-clubs and local triathlon groups or teams or whatever to make sure that they're having swim clinics or they're preparing athletes. Because let me just say something, man. Going to the YMCA and getting some swim lessons isn't going to prepare you at all, 0 period, for open water swimming. It's just not. And I think instead of the 95% of the ones of us that are prepared, or those of people that are prepared in races, instead of taking it out on Ironman, why don't we just flip the script? Because they're not going to change probably, but who can change is us. And so why don't we do a better job of supporting those around us and encouraging them to do things that are going to prepare them better, instead of like, you know what? Instead of having that common theme and that common kind of mantra or cheer of we'll be fine, we got a wetsuit, it's all good, or we need to worry about the swim, or we'll just go slow today, or let's go to open water and practice, and then we're going to get in for 5 minutes and we're going to leave. How about we push each other? How about we challenge each other to prepare ourselves ultimately for every possible scenario that you can imagine? Because that's being a true friend. Instead of taking it out and placing the blame somewhere else, because it's always easier to not look in the mirror. It's always easier to cast blame. And so I think we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and challenge ourselves to hold ourselves to a higher standards and hold our fellow triathletes and friends at a higher standard of, because we care and we love them and we want them to succeed and we want them to be prepared for the best, and the same could be said for all aspects of the sport. Like take it like you said, don't take it so lightly. It's not like we're trying to climb Everest without an oxygen tank, or we're trying to free solo or whatever. Like we're not doing that. But I think a great lesson to have you watched that free solo before?
I can't.
You can't do it? So Allie and I watched it, and first of all, it's insane. It's awesome. but the level and attention to detail that this guy goes into, and how many times he practiced climbing the face of this rock with a rope, writing notes down, memorizing hand to hand, hand here, left toe hold, all these, he memorized it all basically. It sounded like. Then he practiced it God knows how many times for years before he did it. Obviously a much different scenario, but if you take that level of preparation and like that mentality to the sport that we're doing, I think you can kind of see where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
In terms of like, you have to check off your own boxes to be ultimately prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, then guess what? That's on you.
Yeah.
And for the most part, and obviously accidents happen and life is in control, but I think we could all do a better job.
Yeah. There's another thing I was thinking about with regard to that. I mean, the idea that the more it happens, the more we see these things, the more it gets in your head, right? And I just think that's a natural thing too, that with social media and the way things travel around the world, and so it makes it even more difficult in some ways, because everybody's talking about these things, and they may or may not have happened before, which I think they did, but now it's just out, so the more you think about it, that's preparing mentally. It's harder to shake that kind of thing, right? Going into a race now, because it's on your mind, so how do you balance that, and how do you address that? And there's this other thing too that I hear a lot about triathletes these days. I think I'm going to jump in this race. I think I'm going to jump in, and to your point about preparing and memorizing that whole face of the mountain, or whatever the case is like to be really, really ready to go. I think that's so important, like whenever I have a race come in, I mean, I've done that before where I've just been like, yeah, I'm going to jump in and do this race, I can handle it or whatever. And sometimes like a sprint or an Olympic will just throw me off the boat, because I'm sort of like, yeah, I'm going to just do, like didn't think about it much. I wasn't really mentally prepared, or like going into it the week or two. When Ironman comes around, usually I start really getting very particular about my thoughts and my habits and things like that, and I start mentally preparing for that race. I mean, I'm always thinking about it, but I really start zoning in for about a month before that, and not just thinking about it or whatever, but I start visualizing, or like really kind of being conscious of my actions and my sleep, and I really try to dial it up a whole nother level. And it's something I wish I could do all the time with life, but it is something I don't take lightly. But to your point on that free solo thing, is like, I think that's the preparation, like legit preparation, is such a huge deal. You can, because it's hard to, I guess, when you're hearing about all these swims and the deaths or whatever, it's difficult to compartmentalize stuff like that unless you kind of get into your mindset of I don't want to say being positive, but just being diligent with the way you're approaching it.
It's I agree, and I think you could take that. It's like, I mean, I often ask athletes, I'm like, why? Why do you feel like that's a good idea? Mm-hmm. Because we usually don't think past what we want, or what seems like, because most of the time it doesn't even seem like a good idea. It's just it's your brain fulfilling your ego or your personality or what you want at the moment to fill whatever need it is you currently have.
Yeah, you talk about it all the time, making that decision on a high, like how bad that can be.
Like the best races are often the ones you choose not to do.
Right. And
the best workouts that you do all year long are the one that you probably skip. So you don't sacrifice one day into 4. But most athletes can't do that. They just refuse to, and they lack the objectivity to just execute that and be restrained on a daily basis on what seems like a good idea and what doesn't. And I think that's also something that coaches, that we as coaches can always strive to do better at, is making them think for themselves. and because you want your athletes to think for themselves. You want them to come up with the best answer. Like, coaching isn't filling your athlete's head with, a dictatorship, data driven, you have to hit this and this is what you must do and you must, like a freaking cyborg. It's, you need to teach them how to, like, I just think that's a common misconception people have about coaches. Like, well, why, coaches need to tell me what to do all the time. No, they don't. They need to train you and teach you in a manner to where you can help guide it and walk together. And you want to do things as a partnership, and you want them to make decisions independently of you. You don't want them to rely 100% solely on you, because if that's how it is, then like they're never going to ultimately succeed, because you're never going to be around all the time. And you're never going to be around for the race. You're not going to be there at mile 63 of the bike when things go to crap and they can't make decisions. Like, oh, well, I don't know. I got to call my coach. What should I do? I don't know. I got to ask coach.
Yeah, I
You're
mean, that's kind of unfair.
What's unfair?
Well, to put that kind of weight on a coach, I think. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think that athletes think of that way. They aren't secure enough or confident enough to think for themselves. And I think that you have to allow them to do that, and to put them in situations where they have to make those decisions on their own. And because I think that's how we learn. But it should be.
You're real good at that too, where you always say, it's we did it. It's not like you.
Yeah.
They always would thank you, as far as like, he got me, did this and he did this, and but it's not that, man. It's like, you're a guidepost and you help where you can, but so many of those decisions have to come from the athlete along the way. Majority of them. You're not there.
And no, and you shouldn't be. I think I'm sure there are athletes that want their coach to be like that, but it's like, I promise you, more successful if you're not. And it's not that you're not going to need your coach; it's that you should have them setting you up for success, not thinking for you. Because if your coach thinks for you, then when push comes to shove, you're not going to be able to think for yourself when it's time to perform. And you're asked to perform every single day in training. And so if you have zero practice, just talk about preparation with every single type of the event and being mentally ready, if you can't think for yourself and you can't do that and execute on your own without having, the coach inside your brain telling you exactly what to do, then when it comes to the race time, you're not going to have practice doing it on your own. Like I had an athlete reach out to me a couple months ago. It was like, hey, would you be interested in coming to my event? I'd love to have you there. What would that kind of look like? And I was like, listen, man, if you really need me there and it's going to make a huge difference, then I'm not doing my job. Like, I didn't take it as a compliment. It was like, listen, like, if you feel like if at that point in time, and obviously it was like the first few months we worked together, I was like, listen, like, if you really need me there that bad to perform, then I've done a really poor job preparing you. Now, you could want me there.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's totally different. Totally different. But wanting them there because it's a cool experience and it makes you feel good, it's like, that's perfectly normal. Like, I love that. I want to be there. I can't always be there, but I want to be there for you guys. But if it's like, I need you there, then I'm not doing my job, because you shouldn't need me. Because if that's the way that you feel, then I haven't done my job setting you up for success, letting you think, letting you make your own decisions, allowing you to become your own athlete along the way to be who you want to be on race day. And I just think that that's something that also that you have to challenge your athletes to do, and to put themselves in those situations and those scenarios and ask those things then, because yes, do you want your athletes to trust you? Absolutely. But you want them to trust themselves just as much, if not more. And that's often a very delicate balance, but it's also something that a lot of athletes struggle with, and more coaches struggle to allow that growth to happen than not, because they'd rather control it than allow for opportunities to where the athlete can trust themselves. Go by feel, go by, it's scary. Take your watch off and go race. It's scary, it's scary for the athlete, it's scary for the coach. I think because if you really want them to be able to function and learn on their own, like coaching is just another word for teacher. Like you're there to teach people. Like you're not there to tell them what to do. You're there to teach them how to do things, and you do it together. And I think that's just a different mentality that you have to have as a coach, and that it's ultimately that of a teacher. And you have to always be thinking of, like imagine this. Like think if you were in school and you had a teacher who was only concerned about how you did in their class. And they didn't care about how you did in any other class, and they could have cared less about how you did in high school and college, or that you graduated. But as long as you did well in their class, and that's okay. That's how some coaches operate. Like they don't want them to think for themselves and be ultimately successful down the road. They just care about what happens right here, right now, at this race, and is it a PR? And I just think that you have to teach athletes or work towards that goal, because sometimes it is a long journey. Some athletes pick it up quick and can trust themselves very quickly and enormously, and then some athletes it is a ongoing challenge, and you just have to keep at it. You have to remind them it's a partnership and they can't fail you. It's a we thing, like you said, but it all comes down to preparation. And again, you and I, neither one of us are saying ultimate preparation is the prevention for all things bad happening. We're not saying that.
Mm-mm.
But what we are saying is that it is on us all to prepare as best we can. And that starts with the smallest, finest detail that you don't even think is one, to the most important one. If more athletes were concerned with fine tuning their nutrition and learning how to change a flat as quickly as possible, and fine tuning all the small things that they need to do, than they are about running their 22-miler race pace 3 weeks out from their event, they'd all be in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is just funny that this happened, but I said athlete literally text me and say, why can't you just tell me what to do? ? Sheesh, you're making me think you're making me think for myself. And yes, I am, because it's important. Like you just, again, like it goes back to preparation. Like you have to be able to do it on your own, because the biggest decisions that I think we've all made in our lives, we've made while it's been impacted and supported by others. You make them on your own. No one makes them for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just something we need to practice. And again, just prepare as best you can. And I think that's kind of the theme. It's like, just prepare yourself the best you can in every area possible, and that is mentally, emotionally, and physically. Because if you neglect one of those three, then you could be sacrificing the other two.
Yeah, you mentioned it again a few seconds ago, the running without a watch or racing without a watch, and I get a kick out of that sometimes, because when I started the sport, I had one of those chrono watches and that I used all the time, and I used to get so much shit for that. Like, oh, you look at chrono. That, to me, I'm so glad I did that, actually, because it was all about feel for me at that point, and I really felt like that helped me understand my body. I mean, I don't know. So many triathletes, why even need a watch like that? It's like, I feel like, because let me just put it, the stress level I did feel when I got a Garmin went through the roof. Because all of a sudden you're looking at your pace, all of a sudden you're doing this, and all of a sudden it's 90 degrees, and you think you should be running faster than you should, or whatever the case is. And it's kind of like something we joke about, and the numbers, but I think it's a big deal, man. I think it's a huge part of this equation. It's just that, why are we so driven? And I like that you always, when you put out training and you give ranges and things like that, that's the lesson that you need to be working on with yourself, is like, okay, how do I feel today? What do I have? Can I hit 250 watts, or am I like a 200 watt guy today? Those things are fine, you know, but like I don't watch those numbers so much, so I just really kind of listen to my body, and I feel that out. And I just think that, you know, we talk about it a lot, but I just don't know if it's really taken to heart a lot. It's so easy just to flip that watch over and start looking at everything you're doing, and then all of a sudden you're not even in your body. You're somewhere else. You're not. It's like the secondary coach or something, you know, that's pushing you and telling you what to do at all times, but you don't even know who that is. You know, it's just some random numbers that are popping up all over the place, and all of a sudden it's like that's your God or something. It's like, what? You know, just go try to feel better. Go out and have fun and get energized, and not put that kind of burden on yourself all the time.
No kidding. Take the burden off yourself.
It's like, wow, man, life is hard enough without all the stuff, and then we add like, man, I got to go out and hit this pace today. What?
Got to.
I can't. I need to look this up. But a few years ago, the either New York or Boston winner, the woman, and they asked her about her training regimen. And she says, you know, I just go out and run. I don't know. Some days I feel good. Some days I go, you know, whatever. She won the damn marathon. It's like there's elite athletes in this world that are really dialed into those things, the numbers and the training regimens. And, you know, I think about NBA players or something that, you know, they are always in recovery boots. They've got trainers and massage therapists and PTs, and they've always got dietitians around and the whole 9 yards. That's what they do. They're getting paid millions of dollars to do that. The rest of us shoot baskets in the yard. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, dude, I get it.
That's the kind of mentality that we have to remember, I think. It's like, whoa. Unless you're, frankly, you know, younger and your body has probably more capabilities and you have these kind of support systems around you, don't get married to that stuff too hard, man. It's all about feeling good.
It is, man.
It's
trying to feel good.
Feeling good. And you shouldn't have to go out and think about what kind of numbers you're hitting. That shouldn't be the dictator of what feels good, you know?
I hear you, man. Totally agree.
All right. Well, this was a little tough one for me, but thanks for listening.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
We do. We very much do. We have a lot of things going on, so if you want to, feel free. It's an open door. Check out crushingiron.com. It's got all of our info on training and coaching packages, gear, our club membership, other blogs, and links to podcasts and videos. We also have video and link up for our 2020 triathlon camps, which went live today. Some of them are already about halfway full. We got 2 camps in June next year. We actually have 2 slots open in triathlon camp for this coming August. We had some people transfer out of those to next year's camp. So if you have a late season race or just want to get some good quality instruction in around awesome people in a great environment and in great training grounds, look that up as well on crushingiron.com under camps. Or if you have more direct questions about any of that, you can always email me directly, c26coach@gmail.com. Or if you have questions for Mike, you can always hit him at crushingiron@gmail.com.
Works for me, man.
All right, dude. I'll see you Thursday.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
See you, man.